The first frost had already bitten the valley. Other homesteaders stacked firewood. William Reeves stretched gray felt over a round wooden lattice.
A round tent in a valley winter? You are either a fool or you've got a death wish, Reeves.
It's a Silas. An old design. The wind won't catch these walls like a cabin.
Old design. It's a death trap. You'll be begging for a real cabin by first snow, mark my words.
William, what if he's right? Everyone thinks we'll freeze, and the snow's already here.
I haven't told you everything, Karen. There's a reason this shape works.
And then the first real snow began to fall. Soft, steady, and relentless. They gathered inside the half-built chur as darkness swallowed the valley.
It's not even finished. The wind's cutting through. If a real storm hits...
Outside, the wind tested every seam. The valley waited to see if the tent would break before the storm. At first light, William was outside lashing the lattice tighter against new snow.
You've been up since before the sun. You promised to explain this tent. What makes it so special?
The round shape makes wind skim around, not crash into it. Double felt traps dead air like a fur coat. Mongols survived on steppes this way for centuries.
She listened, picturing distant plains and nomads who carried their homes.
Then we need that second layer finished. Teach me to make the felt properly.
They worked into the afternoon, Karen carding wool into thick bats while William stretched and tied each new piece.
Maybe this isn't madness. Maybe we're not as alone as I thought.
But a rider on the trail stopped briefly, staring at the round frame with the kind of pity reserved for the doomed.
Who am I kidding? Everyone thinks we've lost our minds. What if they're right?
They'll eat their words, Karen. When the real winter hits, they'll see.
2 nights later, the sky forgot its mercy. A squall swept down the ridge, howling like a wounded animal, and the chur shook with every gust.
William, I can feel the cold pushing through the felt. It's like we're wearing a thin blanket.
The second layer isn't finished. Without it, the air won't hold heat. I made a mistake starting too late.
They fed the fire until the wood pile shrank, but the wind found every gap in the single layer, leaching warmth faster than flame could give it.
This is what they warned us about. We're going to freeze in a tent while everyone else is safe in their cabins.
Outside, the wind screamed through the valley. Somewhere in the distance, a cabin shutter banged loose, but in the chur, there was no shelter from the creeping cold.
We can't stop now. First light, I start the second layer. We'll finish before the next storm, or we won't make it.
He sounds so sure, but his hands were shaking from more than the cold.
They sat side by side in the dark, listening to the wind tear at the felt, each gust a promise of worse to come.
Remember what I told you, Karen? The round shape, the double felt. We just need to finish it. Then this will all be worth it.
By dawn, William was already outside, lashing the second felt layer over the first, every knot a prayer against the next storm.
Hand me another bat. We'll get this done before sundown.
They fed the frame wool and rope until their hands bled, the chur growing thicker by the hour. That evening, they lit the iron stove and watched the air inside the double-walled tent turn from biting to bearable.
Feel that, Karen. The heat stays. It's like a winter coat for the whole family.
It's actually warm. Maybe this can work.
For the first night since the cold began, they slept without shivering, the chur glowing soft amber in the dark valley. 2 days later, Silas Granger rode up, his face pinched with something that wasn't quite scorn.
Felt soaks water, Reeves. When the snow on top melts and freezes again, you'll be sleeping inside a block of ice.
He turned his horse and left them standing in the silence. The chur's warmth suddenly fragile. The cold snap arrived without warning, dropping the valley into a deep freeze that even the oldest settlers respected. Inside the chur, the stove glowed and the felt held firm. Karen touched the wall and found it dry and warm.
It's not freezing. The moisture hasn't frozen. Maybe Silas was wrong.
Half a mile away, frost crept through the corners of the closest cabin. icing the inside of its wooden walls. That afternoon, an old trapper appeared on foot, studying the Jur with the quiet intensity of a man who read weather in bones.
Round, double-walled. You've been reading old books, son.
It's a Jur. The Mongols used them to survive winters that make this valley look tame.
Winter up north taught me one thing. Square corners betray a man first.
He gave a single nod and walked away without another word, leaving the couple with an unfamiliar feeling. Maybe they weren't fools after all.
An old trapper who knows the cold didn't laugh. Maybe that means something.
A moderate storm rolled in 3 days later, wind driving snow sideways, but William was confident the Jur could handle it. But inside, the smoke flap hung wrong, a small oversight from the final tying, and the stove began backdrafting.
William, I smell smoke. It's building. The tent is filling.
In seconds, the warm air turned choking. Karen dropped to her knees, coughing.
The flap. I have to get to the roof. Keep low.
He scrambled up the lattice, gasping, and wrenched the leather cord free, letting the smoke boil out into the storm. Air rushed in, cold but clean. Karen sucked in a breath and crawled toward the stove.
Too close. We could have died in our sleep.
William dropped back inside, his hands shaking, and retied the flap with a different knot.
It won't happen again. But that was a warning. We can't be careless with fire.
Deep winter clamped down. Mornings, the valley lay still, every cabin roof thick with frost. Inside the cabins, ice traced every corner and seam, the wood sweating cold.
Our walls are dry. Theirs are coated in ice. The Jur is winning.
Reeves won't see February. That felt will soak up meltwater and freeze like a tomb around him and his wife.
Let him talk. His words can't freeze us. The fire and felt are all that matter.
But in the settlement, a few noticed the Reeves never came begging for lumber or a place by a neighbor's fire. A woman fetching water paused longer than necessary, staring at the dry felt and the steady chimney smoke.
She didn't look away like the others. Maybe some are starting to wonder.
But Silas's voice was louder than any quiet doubt, and most still nodded when he called the Jur a circus tent.
They'll learn, Karen. Winter always separates truth from noise.
By midweek, the sky turned an ugly gray. Homesteaders felt the pressure drop and began boarding windows. William hauled extra rope and checked every felt seam, while distant hammering echoed across the valley. Silas Granger appeared one last time, his horse lathered, his face stripped of amusement.
The meeting hall has a stone chimney and solid walls. Reeves, don't be a fool. Bring your wife.
This Jur is my home, Silas. I won't abandon it now.
Silas spat into the snow and rode off. William turned back to the tent, double-checking every tie-down.
The way he's double nodding tells me he's worried. No matter what he says.
The first gust hit as the sun disappeared, a low roar that rattled the felt and sent loose snow swirling.
It's here. God help us.
Then the full force of the blizzard descended, and the valley disappeared inside a white scream. Inside the Jur, the felt walls quaked like a drumhead. The winds roar so loud they had to shout to be heard.
The whole tent is shaking. Will the ropes hold?
They'll hold. The round shape. Remember, the wind can't catch a flat face.
A distant splintering crack cut through the storm, the unmistakable sound of a roof beam breaking.
That's a cabin. Someone's roof just gave way.
The stove gulped air, the fire struggling against the cold that was pressing in from all sides.
We just have to last. The storm will break. It's known these valleys forever, but it's never met a tent like this.
Then, a second crash, heavier and nearer, like a whole wall, falling. The ground trembled through the felt.
That was close. Too close. Was that the Henderson cabin?
Before William could answer, a frantic pounding shook the doorframe, muffled shouts barely audible over the shriek of the wind. William unlatched the door, A blast of ice and snow hurled inside, and through it stumbled Todd Henderson, clutching a splintered beam.
The roof collapsed. It's gone. My wife, my children are out here. Please.
William's hand froze on the cord. In that hesitation, the whole weight of the storm pressed against the opening.
Open it wide, William, now.
He pulled the felt aside, and the Henderson family tumbled in, Mary clutching two small children, their clothes frozen solid.
Thank God. We thought we'd die out there. The cabin just folded.
The jair, once spacious for two, now held 12. The air cooled instantly, but the stove still burned.
I never believed, but it's warm in here. Warmer than our cabin ever was. How?
The round shape and double felt. The Mongols knew. Now we just have to make it through the night.
Outside, the blizzard raged. Inside, 12 souls huddled around a circle of fire, the felt walls trembling but unbroken. The press of bodies became an unexpected blessing. Shared warmth radiated from the felt, and the stove burned steady, demanding less wood.
I always thought a tent would be a death trap, but this, it's like the walls are alive.
Double felt traps air. Round shape circulates heat evenly. No cold corners.
My babies are warming up. Thank you, Karen. Thank you both for opening the door.
There's tea on the stove. Let's get something warm inside everyone.
She filled cups and handed them around, the children's frozen fingers slowly uncurling around the warm tin. One by one, the smallest ones sagged against their parents, lulled by the steady heat and the low hum of wind against thick wool.
If we'd been in our cabin, we'd be buried right now. This is no circus tent.
It's a jair, and it's not luck. It's 2,000 years of trial and error.
The storm outside rose and fell like a living beast, but inside the round felt walls, a fragile certainty grew that morning might actually come. The wind didn't weaken. It circled the jair like a wolf testing a fence, finding no purchase.
We had a stone fireplace back home. You'd think it would be safer, but the draft pulled heat right out the chimney.
Square rooms trap cold pockets. Round space keeps air moving. It's not magic, it's just physics.
He's been waiting to say that. All those weeks of silence. Now a whole lifetime of words.
But as the hours bled together, William grew restless. The ropes outside hadn't been checked since before they let the Hendersons in.
I have to go out, just for a minute, to check the tie-downs.
William, no. You can't see anything out there. You'll get lost.
But he slipped out into the screaming dark, a rope anchoring him to the door. A minute stretched to 2. Then 3. When he stumbled back inside, ice coated his beard, but he was almost smiling.
The felt has a skin of ice, but it's not frozen solid. The insulation underneath is dry. The ropes are holding.
Then, in the deep of the night, the wind simply stopped. The silence was more terrifying than the roar.
Is it over? Or is this the eye?
I don't know, but I have to see.
He pushed the felt aside and stepped into a world remade. The sun was a pale ghost, and the valley lay buried in deep, sculpted drifts. But around the jair, the snow was barely to his knees. The round walls had shed it like a shingled roof. 100 yards away, where the Henderson cabin had stood, only a collapsed roof peak broke the surface of a drift, taller than a man.
There it is. Nothing left but splinters.
Other cabin doors creaked open. Figures emerged, blinking in the glare, staring at the one structure in the valley that hadn't been swallowed.
It held. The circus tent held.
And in the silence that followed the storm, the first hesitant footsteps of the valley began to move toward the strange round tent that shouldn't have survived. The first to arrive were shivering, hollow-eyed. They pointed at the dry felt and the clear ground around the jair.
Anyone who needs shelter, come in. We'll start a fire outside. There's room for everyone to warm up.
At the edge of the clearing, Silas Granger stood before his collapsed west wall. Snow was creeping inside his cabin.
Square corners got no fight against drift. Never seen a tent stand like this.
William dragged logs from the Jur's woodpile and struck a fire in the snow circle. Karen brewed another pot of tea.
There's more coming. Keep the kettle full. We'll need it.
Inside, the injured lay on furs near the stove, the felt walls, a cocoon of warmth against the frozen wreckage.
I called this a circus tent. I was wrong. It's a fortress.
Silas said nothing. He stood at the edge of the firelight, staring at the felt walls that had been the punchline of every joke he told.
There's room inside, Silas, if you need it.
Days later, the crowd around the Jur had changed. They weren't mocking. They were waiting for answers.
The round shape makes wind slide around. No flat face to catch the blast. 2 layers of felt to trap dead air like fur. The red arrow marks north, so we know the safe door angle.
I saw these tents up north. Nomads survived winters that kill cabins.
Silas stood at the back, arms crossed, but he was listening.
The stove at the center heats a dome. No cold corners, no frozen spots.
A boy broke from his mother and pressed his palm into the felt.
Feel that? Just wool, but stronger than a wall when the wind howls.
Heads that once shook in scorn now nodded. The mystery was over.
All those lonely weeks, they were worth it.
The next morning, Karen opened the shed, and a dozen women brought her raw wool.
Card it slow. Let the teeth pull the fibers. They'll lock together like a burr in a horse's tail.
By noon, the women held up the settlement's first fresh felt bat, still warm from the rubbing and rolling.
Now soak it and beat it into shape. This felt will be stronger than canvas and warmer than a log wall.
Outside, Silas approached William with his hat crumpled in both hands, a posture no one in the valley had ever seen.
Reeves, I need to ask you something. How do you set the lattice so the walls don't buckle?
Start with a tight ring at the crown. Set the wall poles at a 45-degree lean. The weight of the felt locks everything together.
Silas nodded slowly, his lips moving as if memorizing every angle.
There he is, the loudest mockery, now asking for lessons. Maybe spring will be different.
By sunset, the felt lay drying on the shed wall, and a fragile new alliance had taken root. When the snow finally melted, the valley floor was no longer empty. 6 frames of young wood stood where only cabins had been.
Our tent isn't alone anymore.
Families who had once called it a circus tent now hefted, felt and hammered lattice under William's quiet instruction.
I set the door facing southeast. Just like you said, the wind don't even touch the stove now.
It feels right, doesn't it? Like the weather knows to leave you alone.
He's not the same man who laughed at us. None of them are.
Children chased each other around the original Jur, its red arrow now a landmark for every new builder. By evening, smoke rose from a dozen round vents, the valley a constellation of warm felt.
We didn't just survive. We changed the way this valley lives.
And the technique everyone laughed at had become the only way anyone would build again. One evening that spring, the settlers gathered inside the original Jur for a meeting, unlike any they'd held before.
I was the loudest fool in this valley. I mocked what I didn't understand. This tent saved my life, and I owe Reeves an apology.
In the far north, I saw whole tribes ride out winters in tents just like this. The Mongols knew what we're only now learning.
A murmur of agreement rippled through the packed felt walls.
I didn't invent anything. I just remembered what others forgot.
He's never been one for speeches, but this is enough.
They passed a simple resolution. Every new home built from that day would use round walls and double felt, or it wouldn't be approved.
The old ways aren't weakness. They're the wisdom that kept people alive when books weren't written.
Silas extended his hand, and William shook it. The valley's loudest critic and its quiet builder stood eye to eye. Above them, the red arrow on the felt glowed in the stove light, no longer a mark of folly, but a symbol of survival. One winter later, a fur trader crested the ridge, and reined his horse to a sudden stop. Below him, the valley held a dozen round felt tents, each glowing with oven heat and hearth smoke. He asked an old trapper about the painted arrow on the oldest tent.
That red arrow marks the first one. Reeves built it. 12 people sheltered inside when the storm broke the cabins.
The fur trader stared at the felt walls and shook his head in amazement.
People called it a circus tent. Now it's the only way folks build from here to the next valley.
The trader tipped his hat and rode on, but he looked back twice. By morning, the story of the round tents was riding north with him, and in the heart of the settlement, the original Jer still stood, its red arrow a quiet landmark. William Reeves never asked for credit, but the felt told his story for him. Another winter fell on the valley, soft and relentless, but this time no one was afraid. The round tents stood like warm lanterns, buried in the snow, their felt walls glowing with the life inside. Inside one Jer, a young family sat circled around the iron stove, a child tracing the edge of a felt bat. William Reeves, his hair now streaked with gray, walked the path between the tents. He stopped at the original Jer, its red arrow still sharp against the faded wool.
Still warm, still holding.
From a dozen roof holes, smoke rose straight into the windless night. The cold pressed against the felt, but could not enter. William looked out across the valley, and for the first time, allowed himself not to worry. The red arrow stood against the snow, a quiet promise that had kept a whole generation through the winter. The spring after, a journalist rode from the east, searching for stories the cities hadn't heard. He found the red arrow, and behind it, a valley full of round, felt tents that had no business surviving. For an hour, he sketched the Jer from every angle, his pencil struggling to capture the curve. The caption he wrote in his notebook became a headline, a frontier secret that defied winter. The story ran in Eastern papers, and soon letters arrived asking for plans. Other settlements began weaving felt, and the red arrow pointed north, south, east, and west. William stood beside the original Jer, his face now lined, Karen's hand in his.
It was never about being right. It was about keeping people warm.
The red arrow, once a mark of mockery, had become a compass point for a new way of living, and the man who painted it never asked for more than that. Evening fell, and a gentle snow began to cover the valley, sifting through the air like quiet breath. Inside the original Jer, a new young family sat around the iron stove, the curved walls soft with years of warmth. The smallest child stood on tiptoe and traced the faded red arrow with a finger. His mother leaned close. "That was the mark of the man who remembered the old ways," she whispered. The child looked up. "Will the tent always keep us warm?" She smiled and answered with the same words William Reeves had spoken in that very circle. The round shape and double felt. It's not luck. It's 2,000 years of trial and error. Outside, the snow gathered against the felt, harmless, while the tent glowed like a lantern. The red arrow caught the firelight, a quiet compass that had saved a valley. And inside the round felt walls, a new generation fell asleep warm, in the tent that should never have survived. He wove a felt tent like the Mongols, and while every wooden cabin froze, his stayed warm inside.